Okay, that's great. We'll like to move on to our next speaker. Uh, our next speaker is Nikoletta Hosso. Nikoletta Hosso is an honorary university associate professor, thesis consultant, head of examination board of Kudulani Janos University. She is the founder and CEO of World Protocol magazine, founding member of World Protocol Organization, owner and CEO of European Protocol and Event Management Center, founding president of the Association of International Protocol Professionals, and founder of the world's first and only protocol diplomacy traveling exhibition. Nikoletta apologies for that, okay. Nikoletta possesses 4 university degrees in protocol, international relations, social sciences, translation, and she's currently the doctoral candidate and her thesis focuses on sports protocol and diplomacy. Also, she has been teaching for over 10 years. She's the founding course leader of International and Sport Protocol Professional postgraduate university courses in Hungary. She's a recognized author and of 6 academic books on various fields of protocol. She has over 15 years experience as chief of protocol and head coordinator working in top governmental, sports, business, and academic events. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll welcome our next speaker, the indefatigable Nikoletta Hosso.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Anne, for the introduction. And let me just quickly straight away open my slide and share this presentation with you, which has a very important topic, a huge topic, only 15 minutes to cover, but I hope that I can tell you everything that I think we need to know about sports diplomacy's role in achieving UN Sustainable Development Goals. So my topic is strengthening relations and strengthening people, because this is what sport is about and this is what diplomacy is about. But sport and sport diplomacy and sport diplomats, this is an evolving field. This is a relatively new field of public diplomacy and diplomacy as a whole. So we need to introduce this topic properly. And first and foremost, I would like to talk about the values of sport and why we have sports protocol and sports diplomacy at this conference, for example. I'm going to try to give you a definition of sports diplomacy as such, and how and where do we place sport in the diplomatic framework. Then I'm going to talk about sports diplomacy as a soft power tool, and hoping to define and identify the levels and actors of sport diplomacy, both in national and both on international level. And then, of course, we are going to move on and find sport in the UN Sustainable Development Goals and how to build and create powerful, strong national sports diplomacy. How do we define and how do we interpret the definition of sport diplomats? And then if we identified our own sport diplomats, how can we select them and how we can train them in order to be effective and successful in sports diplomacy? So first and foremost, we need to recognize the social power of sports. That is to bring together people, nations and communities via the shared love of sport. This is the most important thing. Whether you are an athlete and you do the sports, whether you are a spectator and you enjoy watching the games, the big European or international sporting events or Olympic Games, something is common. You love sports. So Sports can also teach us values like fairness and team building and equality and discipline, and also inclusion and respect, which is very, very important. And it also has the power to provide a universal framework for learning these values, thus contributing to the development of soft skills needed for responsible citizenship. And now these skills that you need in citizenship it is the core value and the core basic principles that sports diplomacy is built upon. But let's not forget about the economic value of sport, which is just as important as social values. The active participation in sports, as you can see, it can improve community health. If you do sports, you will have a healthy nation, which is capable of producing. It reduces the medical expenses, and of course, it will enhance social inclusion. Sorry, I don't know what I was just doing. Sports sector can also contribute to the economy in many ways, providing employment. When you are organizing large events like European or World Championships, all the spectators are coming together, that you can convey messages to the world. Proving that your country, your government, your athletes are there on the sports map, are capable of realizing these fantastic events. So they are capable countries as well. So therefore, we are moving towards and see why sports has been part in diplomacy, has been part of diplomacy for a long time. Over the past decade, more and more governments have recognized these benefits that I was just talking about. Therefore, as we can see later on, some of the countries are better, have developed strategies, long-term policies, they have visions, they created institutions, they created relevant policies, so that they know what they want to achieve, they know where they want to see themselves in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years. Therefore, they can become stronger. Today, we say that sports diplomacy is interpreted as an inseparable part of public diplomacy. Public diplomacy means the straight strategy to communicate directly with foreign publics, for example, via these European and international sporting events. And it is interpreted as conscious and strategic and ongoing use of sports and sports people, athletes, coaches, sports professionals, and sporting events themselves by state and non-state actors to advance policy, trade, development, education, image, reputation, and of course, people-to-people relations that we are talking about. So sports diplomacy can be interpreted as soft power. It is the use of sport as a tool to influence diplomatic, intercultural, social, and even political relations, as we say. So it is a much needed tool, especially in the 21st century, that has been dominated by disintegration and introspection. So now we see that we need sports in our life, in our public life, in our private life, and in a macro level as well. But then again, who are the actors in sport diplomacy, and what are the levels of sport diplomacy that we can identify, and who is it exercised by? Who are the actors themselves? First, we can say that there are the governmental actors on an international level. For example, IGOs. Here we are, apart from the UN, the EU must be mentioned. EU has a very, very complex sports diplomacy policy that can be used as a tool to show the way to the member countries where they would need to head on their national level. And talking about national level, we are talking about the state level, where different countries have different goals in sports, different means, of course, and different visions. So it is a very, not just complex but very, very colorful landscape. Sports diplomacy as a very colorful landscape. Within the state level, we have governmental and non-governmental actors. Even more so, as like I said, over the past decade, many governments realized that, yes, they need to be involved, and sports need to be part of the government. For example, Hungary, for 2 years now, there has been a sports diplomacy department working and functioning within the infrastructure of the National Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And for example, their job and their work is to communicate with the diplomatic agents and diplomatic representations accredited to Budapest and who are functioning in Hungary, and share all the sports political visions and strategies with them. So these are the components, and also the non-governmental sports diplomatic actors. Usually they are the national sports federations, the athletes themselves, or coaches or sport leaders. But of course, we need to start with the international level, talking about the global sports organizations, the IOC, the International Olympic Committee and such, the European and international sports federations, and then the national sport federations, and within the athletes, the different sports associations, even the sports companies, sports institutions, sports educators, sports scholars, and sports events themselves. So it's not only at national level, but international level has been recognized the growing contribution of sport to maintain peace and promote social values, and promote tolerance and respect in the world. But which are the UN Sustainable Development Goals where sports is being represented, or where can sport contribute to the UN Sustainable Development Goals? For example, goal number 3, ensuring healthy lives and promote well-being at all ages, or ensuring inclusive and quality education for everyone and promoting lifelong learning. I'm a big fan of lifelong learning. Or achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. This is very important. Breaking it down to our level, to our national level in Hungary, for example, in the Hungarian National Tennis Federation, 2 years ago, we founded the Women's Committee, and I'm a member of the committee, and our job, our role is to help promote the rights of ladies, girls, whether they are athletes or coaches or sport professionals in Hungary, as well as on an international level within the sport of tennis. It can also help to achieve goal number 11, making cities inclusive, safe and sustainable. Or goal number 16, promoting just and peaceful, inclusive society. And that comes from the social values of sport that I just mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. And of course, it can revitalize global partnership for sustainable development. First things first, when coming to your national level and hoping to achieve these goals around you in your country, then moving to the international arena and contributing to the SDGs. We need to see how powerful we are, how powerful these countries are. So as a government, this is the first question they need to ask themselves. How strong my sports diplomacy is? Where am I on a European or international scale? Where am I on the list? And how powerful are the other countries around me, in my neighborhood or on my continent? What are the countries that I can create healthy and positive and mutually beneficial relationships based on sport? So in order to harness the beneficial values of sports diplomacy, we need to evaluate ourselves. We need to assess the country's national political power, national geopolitical and sports political power. And in order to do so, we need to examine the existing institutions and the people within, the ones who are making it work, and all related actors within the sports field. And then you can define your position on your continent, in the world, where you place yourself in the international arena of sport compared to other countries. So I'm not sure if you know, but there is a very interesting fact, a measurement, a survey on the countries and their sports political power. Countries are being measured how sports politically strong or even weak they are. And there is a number that is based on different factors that are weighed, and it is a publicly reachable document published by the National Olympic Committee of Denmark. And we are going to talk about the example of Denmark, but we could talk about any other country, because this is how they would need to reach out, and how they would need to start the evaluation of their position in order to be successful in the long run. So the Sports Political Power Index, the latest one is between 2019 and 2021, measures the international influence of countries based on their positions in 118 associations and organizations. Whether the organization is international, European, they get different numbers. Whether it's the larger community like the IOC or the European Olympic Committee, you've got a bigger number. So you have different factors for all these memberships, and this is how the countries are being weighed, where they are present in these federations, European and world federations. And of course, we are not only going to compare and see the list in 2021, but we can go back all the way to 2013 and see the European power list or the international power list. Now, this is very interesting. According to the study and according to these measurements, France is the first in the European Power Index. They have the most sports diplomacy, sports political power, having 287 points, even though they dropped, for example, 12 points since 2019. Italy is second, and here we go, United Kingdom is third in line. Then we go Germany, Russia, Spain, and we have Hungary somewhere on the 13th country on the list, and see the differences comparing to the 2013, 2015 positions, whether they gain points, whether they have more members representing their own country in these European and world federations, or they have dropped and lost points is because they don't have that many members representing their country. And this is the international index. United States has kept its leading position, even though they lost 27 points the last 2 years, but still first in line. They have the most members, the most representatives globally. Second, France. Straight away, you can see that they gained 4 points as compared to 2019, and they gained 37 points in the survey in 2017. Around that year, France, and not France, but Paris was awarded to hold the international Olympic Games, the Summer Olympic Games in 2014. So probably this is why they gained so much point. And then we have Australia, the third in line, 30 plus points in 2019, 54 points in 2017. And they have made the biggest point winning of all times, comparing to all countries. And maybe this is because this is the time around when they launched their long-term sports diplomacy strategy. And they made it clear in the world that they have a vision, they are planning ahead in the long run, and they are taking it seriously, and they are considering sports diplomacy as a very important factor in their in their politics. And if we are comparing the different countries, you can also see that some of them, not just Australia, but also France and Japan has a very articulate sports diplomacy strategy. Hungary doesn't. We don't have a strategy. We have not put in words what we'd like to see or where we'd like to see our country in 5 years, in 10 years, what we want to reach, what are our goals, what are our visions, who are our actors, who are our decision makers, what is the institution behind. So we have a lot to cover, but then again, as we see, we have good examples to follow, and we have best practices to implement in our strategy. We can also have a look at how countries train or what they do for their own diplomats, whether they are current and functioning diplomats or whether training the new generations. As you see, there are several programs offered by Australia, France, United States, and even Japan. Hungary, not so much. Then again, whether sports diplomacy ambassador position as such exists in the country. They all make a difference. Whether they have sports envoys program, the representatives whose job is to move forward, to promote the values of sport and sport diplomacy. So we can after we have evaluated our place, we have evaluated and assessed our skills, our institutions, our people within the sports arena. Now, the second step is we can plan and prepare. We can define clear and long-term sports diplomacy strategies to show the world that, yes, we take it seriously, and this is what we want to do. This is our goal. This is where we are heading towards. And you need to do so gathering around all decision makers, governmental decision makers, as well as non-governmental decision makers. And third step is that you need to identify your current and possible future sports diplomats. Who are your sport diplomats working, representing Hungary, representing national federations in a European or world federations? And you need to support them. You need to train them. You need to provide tools. You need to provide possibilities of long-time learning for sports diplomats as well. You need to include education as well. You need to provide them a scholarship, for example, and create institutions. And why I'm talking about this is a little bit more about sports diplomats, because this is the focus that I'm having in my dissertation and in my research for the last few years. And because I do believe that the success of any national sports diplomacy is based on the soft skills of the sports diplomats. So we need to train that. We need to rely on our sports diplomats who are out there in the international arena and hoping that they're going to do a good job, or hoping that they are going to represent our country the way it's supposed to. But first things first, who is a sports diplomat? And there are various definitions, even in Hungary, on an international level as well. There are different approaches and different interpretations given by the government or given by the sports sector. Sport leaders or athletes or coaches or former or current sports professionals, they all think differently about sports diplomats. Then again, the scientific field and scholars or educators, they have a different approach and interpretation as well. People who are working in diplomacy, classic diplomacy and foreign relations, they have a different approach and interpretation as well. And of course, the general public thinks a very different way of sports diplomats. So now the question arises, whether the sports diplomats are born and raised or trained, whether they only come from the world of sports, whether they have an athletic background, they were doing sports for a long time, they were successful, they achieved recognition, and then they can move to the diplomatic field? Or can they come from any other places? So there are so many questions related to sports diplomats on a national and on an international level alike. Apart from who they are, what is their role in international relations? What do they do specifically? What's their job? What do they do from 9 to 5? Or do they work every day? How they are represented in these associations and in these platforms. And once again, what's their background? Are they former athletes? Do they really all come from sports, or they come from politics or any other field, social sciences or whatever? And how are they selected and trained for these international roles, if any? Is there any training program? Is there any education program provided by the country? And what's their education background? How well do they speak foreign languages? What do they think themselves, who are being elected in these European and international associations? What do they think they should do and they should be considered? What do they think themselves, which are the most important skills for them? And what are the government? What do the governments think, or what do the education sector think about it? And who are they in the classic diplomatic lens, so via classic diplomatic perspectives? And can foreign policy makers and can foreign ministries as a part of the government help and support the sports diplomats and sport leaders having international roles, important international roles. So once you do your state mapping, you can make recommendations based on all the answers. For example, my study, I've been doing this research for the last 2 years, and I interviewed many sports leaders in Hungary, many government representatives, and I asked specific questions. Who do you think a sport diplomat is in Hungary? What do you think their role is, their function is? How do you think you can contribute to their development, to professional development? Then I asked already elected sport diplomats, okay, who is helping and supporting your job, your position? Is there any training program available for you, or would you need one at all? According to the answers, surveys or interviews, and also based on international studies and analyzing best practices and case studies, we can contribute to the policymakers, to the government policymakers on a national level. But this is where it starts, and then we can move forward step by step and look at it in a bigger perspective. So in order to build a strong sports diplomacy on a national level, to strengthen both relations and people, and later on to contribute to the UN SDG goals, states need to analyze and evaluate their own sports political power. And once you know that, they can establish long-term national sports diplomacy strategies. And after that, they can select and therefore train their own sport diplomats to be capable of achieving not only national, but also the global goals. Now, this is what I had for you on this topic, on this sports diplomacy. This is a very important field, I think, much to talk about, still young, lot to learn, lot of experience to share. And I'm very happy that in this conference, in this context, I could bring it into your attention, because yes, sports diplomacy can contribute in achieving UN sustainable goals.
Excellent. Gosh, I am amazed at the level of information regarding sports diplomacy. I'd never really thought of it on that level. I mean, I remember, witnessing Qatar and, the whole positioning Qatar as a global sports place. But just with all the information that you have provided, it's just amazing. There is a question for you though, so let me just go straight there, and then we can probably it's just fantastic what you've just said. What measures or influence do sports diplomacy use to settle disputes among big and small actors in local and international space?
Local and international space. Okay. Similarly, as you were hearing, I was working in protocol, and I'm still working in protocol for quite some time. And sports is very similar to protocol. We should be apolitical. We should be sort of value. How to say it, we are not talking about when we are doing sports and sports delegation programs, and we are sitting down, sport leaders or sport leaders together with political leaders on the same table, and maybe having completely different views, different agenda, and different perspectives, or even opposing interest, which is a little bit more difficult. We need to look at the common goal, the common interest, and the long-term perspectives, what they can mutually achieve from the cooperation. And sports, with the social values that I just mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, it can teach us values ourselves as an individual. When I sit down to the table, if I do sports, if I come from the world of sports, there is a different way of me negotiating myself. There's a different way of organizing a meeting and a sensitive to talk about a sensitive issue or a dispute event. It is very similar to protocol. This is exactly what we've been doing for the last I don't know how many years. Protocol is obviously mainly dealing with diplomatic representatives and state representatives, so that they can do and fulfill their capacities and articulate their interest, sports leaders alike. So we need to look out for the common goals, the global values, peace, respect. It's all about peace and respect and tolerance. We need to accept others. We need to accept each other's different point of view, and compromise and hopefully make sure that our interests, they come together and everyone reaches their goal. But yeah, I would be using sports core values and social values, and would take the human factor in line.
Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent. Patricia, do you have something? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to. All right, thank you so much, Nikoletta. I'm always very excited when you're on stage in terms of, sharing all that in terms of sports diplomacy, because, sustainability is actually an inclusive environment. So we're thinking about all the places, other countries, and I think Africa is quite relevant in this issue in terms of sports diplomacy. So I'm not sure what your speculations are, or in terms of your projections looking at the power index. Do you see Africa coming up in terms of where they sit, talking about the power index? That is one question. Then two, I just want to let everyone know that Nikoletta is quite a very powerful lady. She's the driver and the initiator of the World Protocol Matter initiative, and I just wanted to mention the great work she's doing in terms of bringing all of that relevance in terms of protocol and where it is today. And just also mention that after this conference, we'll be putting our heads together and how we're going to celebrate. I use the word celebrate because it's quite a whole lot. But we're going to be hosting the World Protocol Marchers online conference in May, and Nikoletta had been one of the biggest drivers for that initiative. So thank you, Nikoletta, and if you can give me some answers to my question. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Africa. Yeah, I was just double checking the list, the international list. Not too many African countries, but the 20th. I mean, this is like a nice place for South Africa with 73 points and gaining constantly gaining basically points, and that means positions in European and international on international levels. So yes, we can see that country is coming up nice and fastly on an international level as a sports diplomatic power. But there is much to do in Africa, I think, and with the fact that Africa may host successful international games that can draw attention, the public eye to these countries. International events can be a means, can be a tool to attract attention and influence the opinion of public, and use international events as a public diplomacy tool. And this is what I would recommend as a way of placing ourselves as an African country to the international map of sports diplomacy. But then again, the second thing is that comes to my mind is education. Everything is down to education. So if we bring sports diplomacy, sports protocol knowledge to Africa, we can train these people. We can actually train and make raise awareness in the diplomatic field as well, that they should focus also on sports, and also in the sports sector as well within the African countries. Those sports professionals who are being involved in professional sport, whether they are athletes or coaches or leaders of their national federations. So there's a lot of potential, but I think raising awareness, providing education, and then stepping out to the international arena by organizing sporting events in African countries, that can make a big change, and they can harness from sports diplomacy as well. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
No, that's fine. Really good. Yeah, it's quite a positive indication. So I think that's fine.
So
yeah,
raise awareness and educate.
Your team. Yeah. So thank you so much. Yes.